Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the really warm welcome. Really appreciate it. And give it up for Glenn and his team for putting these things together, because things like ProductTank only live on because of folks like him who make them happen. And thank you all for being here. So, thank you. Thank you. All right, so today we're going to be charting the uncharted. I've got a lot of things going on here. We're talking about lean road mapping. We're talking about OKRs, and because the world is changing so fast, I've changed up my talk and I'm throwing in some AI stuff. Now, Glenn did wonder about my whole 75 slides in 25 minutes. I did insist that I can do that. I go fast. So I'm going to get going with it. I do have my slides available there in that really long bit.ly link there, but you can just actually hit up the QR code and you will get the slides. I will also include that QR code and that slide link on other slides throughout, so feel free to grab that. You've already got the intro to me though. I'm a product person at heart. I was a product person before I started Mind the Product and ProdPad, which is probably why you kind of expect I got into all this. I've done a whole bunch of other mentoring and consulting and other product work in between it all. So I've had a chance to work with lots and lots of product people and learn lots of product stories. So I love getting a chance to share that stuff with you here today, and bringing that into what I've actually learned over the years and how that works with things like the Now Next Later roadmap and stuff like that. So I often talk about what the trouble is with timeline roadmaps. Let's dive into that. I mean, this is one of my old roadmaps. This is something that I created at an old company I worked for, and when I created this, my boss loved it. They loved when I gave them this level of certainty of which features were going to be delivered and when. It was like they gave me this little pat on the head and said, "Good job, now go deliver it." But it was, the only reason I was doing it was because everyone else is doing it. I looked it up on Google and I said, what does a product roadmap look like? And Google said, this is pretty much what a roadmap looks like. And I was like, great, good job, keep doing it. But I can see why now roadmaps are letting us down, right? Now, why is that? What is actually going on with timeline roadmaps? Well, this is fundamentally the timeline roadmap. What's going on here? Well, if you break it down, it's like a math chart with things to do on the y-axis and time on the x-axis, creating this timeline. And at first it seems pretty easy to use, especially in the short term, but the more you put on there and the further out you plan, the harder it becomes to manage. And of course, everything you put on there, because you have that time on the timeline, everything on that roadmap, just by the virtue of being on the roadmap, has a due date and a duration. So you're penalizing yourself by giving yourself a due date and duration just by putting things on the roadmap instantly. And what you end up with is a whole bunch of assumptions. We know that assumptions are dangerous in product management. I mean, the first assumption you're making is that you know how long each thing is going to take, which might be simple for the short-term stuff, the stuff that you've planned out with your developers, over the next couple of weeks. But we all know that the further out you're planning, the more you're actually making it up. And you're also assuming that nothing's going to come in and disrupt your timeline, right? Everything's been super smooth sailing these last few years, right? Yeah, right. And you're also assuming that each of these features is just going to work as soon as it's launched, right? You planned 3 weeks to get that checkout flow running smoothly. It's going to have a 10% conversion rate. And so once it's done, you can move on and do the next thing. No problem. Keep going, right? Right. And you're also assuming that each of these features, because you dreamed them up, they just deserve to exist now. So they deserve to go on the roadmap. It's part of your feature. They're codified. Let's go. Let's not question what you thought of last year in terms of what you're going to do this year. What you've got here is a big assumption that nothing is going to change. Dangerous assumptions. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, you end up with a whole bunch of made-up release dates that lead your developers on these death marches, these stressful marches to get things out on time, which frankly leaves them stacking up a whole bunch of tech debt that you have to go back and fix anyways. You end up with these mismanaged expectations with your sales and customers. You end up with missing market opportunities because you're so busy building what's been outlined based on what you wrote down 6 months ago, you end up downright building the wrong things, and that leads to you being a sad product manager. This is where the therapy comes in, right? We don't want any of that. And the thing is that it leads to a vicious cycle. That deadline-driven work gets worse and worse and worse, because what happens is if you give somebody a deadline, what they want to do is you say, well, how long is this going to take? And they say, well, it takes 2 weeks, but I'm going to tell you 3 weeks. So you put 3 weeks on the roadmap. And those bigger buffers stretch your timeline roadmap. Your roadmap gets longer. And so your execs get nervous because everything's taking too long. And so they try to tighten down controls because they're like, why is everything taking so long? So we better, keep a close eye on that team because they take so long to do things. And so they don't give you any time for rework or give you time to work on quality or anything else. They just want you to launch the things when you said they were going to be launched. And so you end up with this almost blame culture when things go wrong, right? If you didn't hit that date, then you're really in trouble. And so what do you do next time? Well, they said 3 weeks, let's make it 4 weeks. And so next time, your roadmap stretches out even further and further. This is why you see teams that are like 150 developers that are outperformed by teams that are like 2 developers. Right? These super agile teams who just get things done because no one's asking them to write down and promise how long it's going to take them to do stuff. They're just shipping experiments after experiments after experiments and not tied down to some project mindset. So, that all sucks. Is there a better way? Yeah, of course. I mean, this is why I'm here to chat to you. I'm here to talk about lean road mapping, which is a better way to navigate. So, lean is all about build, measure, learn. We all know Eric Ries, or at least we know this build, measure, learn cycle. All right, well, the key thing about this is not the build part, it's really about the learning part, right? We're here to learn. And I actually see your roadmap as a tool to help you learn and iterate, but at the strategic level. And put more succinctly, I call your roadmap a prototype for your strategy. So let me break this down into where I see this being really powerful. When you do a new feature, you don't just take that new feature idea and run straight to your developer, start coding it yourself, and just code up something from your head, because almost certainly it's going to be kind of junk. It's not the best version that it could possibly be. What you do is you sketch it down on a piece of paper, or you put it in Figma, or whatever the cool kids are using these days, and then you show it to someone. You show it to a colleague or to a customer or whatever, and you get feedback, and they tell you why it's not great. And they say, well, if you added some copy there or a button here, it'd be better. And you throw out that old version of the prototype, and you make a new version. You iterate on that, because it's cheap, it's easy. And then the more versions of that prototype you do, the better chance you are that the final version that you code up meets the problem or solves the problem that you hoped it would in the first place. Well, road mapping can be similar. Right? But what you're doing is you are prototyping at the strategy level. So you're taking your ideas of, hey, well, I've talked to you and you and you, and I understand that the problems are, I think they're this and then this and then this. What do you think? You're just sketching out high-level thoughts and letting people give you feedback on it. And they might say, well, you think it's this, then this, and this, but I think it's this, then that, then the other. Oh, well, it's a good thing we had this conversation before we committed to the wrong direction. And somebody might say, well, what about that other thing over here? Or actually, we don't have to worry about that problem because AI solves it now. Cool. Well, good thing we didn't go solve that in the wrong way too. So it's by having these conversations early before you commit to stuff that you can avoid building the wrong stuff. And there's nothing more lean than that. So, I mean, if your first roadmap looked something as simple as this is crayon. Basically, this is made in Paint. A really simple, just a version of saying, I think we have problem 1, 2, and 3, and you showed something like this to your team. I'd be proud. This is a good roadmap. This is a good road mapping discussion point. You're not getting overcomplicated and making the most beautiful roadmap. You're just getting your thoughts out on paper so you can share with other people. Maybe you just do a really quick road mapping session, Post-it notes or a Miro board or something like this, where you say, here's some problems and opportunities we have. Let's just sort them and decide on like the rough cut of what we have. If you already have an existing roadmap that is kind of bloated and has a whole bunch of features and dates and lines and dependencies and all that junk, I recommend you try this. It's one of my favorites. You are allowed to do this. It is called roadmap bankruptcy. Start it tomorrow. Just throw out your old roadmap and start again. Now, what you do is you start with a fresh roadmap, and you say, here's my step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's rebuild the roadmap, and you do it based on feedback. And you know what? Worst case scenario, you do a whole bunch of work, you talk to a whole bunch of people, and you recreate your old roadmap perfectly. What you've just done is you validated that your old roadmap was perfect, and you know you're on the right path. Great. Run at it. Go do it. Great. I bet you will not recreate your old roadmap. I bet you'll find things on your old roadmap that you won't end up putting back on it because it didn't come up again. It wasn't important anymore. I bet you'll find new problems to go solve that you didn't think of because when you were building your old roadmap, they weren't important or they weren't available to your mind, right? They just weren't there. And so your new roadmap is going to be a better representation of the strategy you should be following based on the information you have today. So do roadmap bankruptcy. Do it every year, every quarter, whenever you want to. Throw it out and start again. Your roadmap is not some pristine, perfect document that you have to, some tablet that tells you where you're going. It is this communication document that's meant to be thrown out and recycled and tossed around. It's a prototype for your strategy. Use it as such and it becomes way more powerful. It's really important to remember that product is uncharted territory, right? It's like you don't have some map that you can follow, right? It's not like you can pull out Google Maps and say, this is where we're going. Everyone here is building a unique product. Everyone here is building a product that has not been built before. If it had been built before, you would just copy what they're doing, right? Everyone here is building something unique. It's like you've landed on some new shore that no one has ever found before, and you've got to use your own wits, your own resources, your own team to figure out how you're going to get to those gold-topped mountains in the distance. And you can't pull out Google Maps. You don't have such things. You've just got to stand where you are and figure out what's ahead of you. And so this is where the concept of these time horizons come in. It's like, well, what's in front of you? And what's further out? And what's on the distance? What's out there in the distance? What can you see? And obviously the things further out in the distance are a bit fuzzier, right? You can't get down to the detail there. And the stuff right in front of you is pretty crystal clear. Like if you land on this new shore and there's a bear right in front of you, like that is the first problem to go solve. It's crystal clear. You can break it down in detail. You're like, okay, we're going to fight it. We're going to run. We're going to do something about this. That is, you put that on your roadmap and you talk about that so people know to deal with the bear. But also, you might also be able to see into the distance that, hey, by the way, guys, you see that bear, but I'm also just telling you, as you're fighting that, there is a hill. We are aiming for that hill. So once you finish with the bear, make sure we all head off towards the hill. We're not just walking off back towards the water, right? So you give people that directional thing. There might be things to do with the hill, like get some ice climbing gear or warmer clothes, but that's too fine-grained. You don't need to go that much into detail. You just need to tell them, get to the hill because you know there's gold there. And people will be able to directionally get there. And there's probably things off in the middle distance as well, right? So there might be opportunities, there might be problems, there might be bogs and rivers and bridges and other stuff like that. And it's up to you as a product manager to map out the best path. There is no one best path. It is your job to work as a team. And the best teams are the ones who regularly regroup together and say, hey, so what do you see? What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? What's in every different direction and what should we do about this as a product team? And based on what you're discussing, what you're talking about, how often you remap your path as you take each step, this is what's going to map the best path for you and get you closer and closer to that hill in the distance. So those time horizons map really naturally into a roadmap, right? This is where you get that concept of the now, the next, and the later, where the now represents the things that are much more granular, and the later represents those things that are high level, very broad scope, much more flexible. There's lots of ways that you can get there, but you still want to know that you want to get there. Now, OKRs play really well with a now, next, later roadmap. They're like the compass for your team. They keep your team pointing in the right direction. But why do so many teams give up on OKRs? I've heard a lot of teams find that they don't play well. Well, I think it's because OKRs are missing an ingredient. OKRs stand for objectives and key results. And the magic of OKRs is that they give the team the chance to all find ways to collaborate towards a goal. So what happens is you've got high-level management saying, here's our North Star. We're all trying to aim for this type of thing. This is what good looks like. This is what success is. And then each team can talk about how they're going to pitch in to solve that problem. This is a lot different than the old way of doing it, where you'd have middle management saying, well, you do this many things, and you do this many things, and you do this many things, and everyone's kind of working in their own silos, and they hope that that middle management person, or people, kind of had it figured out. But what's really happening with OKRs is that these teams are saying, hey, if we all know that that's the goal, let's work together to spot the gaps and the overlaps so that we don't miss anything, and we can all together figure out how we're going to reach that goal. So it becomes more effective if OKRs are used as they're meant to be used. But there is a piece that's often missing, and I call them initiatives. So where initiatives are really important, I guess initiatives get a bit forgotten. It's, I guess, because Oikers doesn't have a really good ring to it. But initiatives are like the glue between objectives and key results, right? So objectives are like what you need to achieve, right? That's what good looks like. And key results are the specific measurable piece. Well, initiative is the thing that you're going to do, the actions you're going to take to get there. All right, so to break this down to something more specific, let's say you wanted to set a goal to improve your overall health to avoid illness or injury. That's your objective. You might have a key result, measurable thing, something like lose 15 pounds by the end of the year. It's not going to melt away on its own. You're probably going to have to do some sort of initiative, like introduce a regular exercise to your schedule. You might have to do multiple things as well. You might have to refactor your diet. So there's going to be multiple things you need to do in order to hit those key results. A lot of teams run into this problem where what they do is they just have objectives and key results, and then they set the team off to go do whatever. And they end up with a problem that I call OKR drift. Right? So you've got all your OKRs off in one little space, and you've got your product stuff happening off in another little space, and the two aren't communicating. And at the end of the quarter, you go back to your objectives, your spreadsheet or whatever you've got, and you sort of go, oh, we didn't look at those all quarter. Well, what was actually tying us to that work? What you need to do is tie the two together, and one way you can do that is with a lean roadmap. So putting together the time horizons and the concept of objectives allows you to tie that together. So each of the cards here, those blocks, is an initiative. And each one of those is tied to a high-level objective. So pink might be reducing churn, green might be revenue, blue might be engagement or whatever. Each one in turn might be tied to different experiments, as in the things that you're going to be doing to solve those problems. You might have more granular detail as to which KRs, which key results, are going to be affecting as well. But it's tying it all together. So you're basically saying, what is that we're actually doing in order to impact our objectives? And how are we actually going to go about solving those problems? And how are we getting on with solving those problems? So it ties it all together into one space that your team can use. So this is one way that your lean roadmap might look. There's other formats that I've seen. Yours might look like this. This is like what I call the swim lanes version, or grouped by objectives. The key thing is that it's taking the focus off of just hitting delivery dates, just having a bunch of features for the sake of having features, and instead getting your team thinking about solving problems, working together to hit those objectives and solving problems as a team. So, how do I get my team on board? A lot of people are like, yeah, great, I like this, but my boss is gonna be like, no. Right? Yeah, okay. I always get these questions afterwards, so I thought I'd just build it in. It wouldn't be a real product management talk if there wasn't an it depends slide. I can tell you that regardless of who you've got saying no to the now, next, later, I can tell you that there are ways to convince your boss that, driving towards, having deadlines on your roadmap does not make you move faster, or that your investor doesn't want a team who just builds in a waterfall way, or that your salespeople and your marketeers are actually going to get more out of you if you don't have a timeline roadmap and you actually separate your hard launch from soft launch, or your customers actually can see your roadmap without it having dates on it. So just to give you some very high-level ones, let's say your boss, they want to see what you're working on, so you're going to be more productive. Their whole thing is like, don't make me guess at what my team is doing. The conversation you've got to have with them is that you got to point out that deadline-driven work is not making you work faster. Oftentimes, that roadmap is just a comfort blanket to them. It's making them look good to their boss or to themselves, making them feel comfortable. But in reality, your boss wants a good return on investment. They want to know that their team is effective and that the money that they're putting towards this thing is not being wasted. And so you've got to be able to show that you're removing tech debt, you're removing delays, you are helping the company do more with the resources it has by working in this way. And so you want to ask for more space so you and your team can perform the best they can. Let's say your investors want to see some big, heavy timeline of things that you're going to go build before they give you any more money. That is definitely something that you can call BS on, because frankly, if they wanted to see a big list of things you were going to go build, they could take that money and they could go ask an agency to go build that. They're not investing in a team to go build a list of things. They're investing in a team who is reactive, who can look at the market, look at the space, and react appropriately when something happens. And if you can show them that you've reacted appropriately in the past, then they should be able to give you space to react appropriately in the future. So show them how you work, show them how you think, show them how you operate as a team, and what your process is as a product team, and they'll give you space to move forward as a company. If they really, really push and they say that they really want to see that timeline roadmap, are they really the kind of investor you want breathing down your neck going forwards? Marketers, I mean, fair enough, they want to get visibility of what kind of things are coming down the pipeline so they can market their own stuff. But the key here is to separate hard launch from soft launch. The real problem here comes when you try to stack up a marketing project with a developer project. One of those projects has an unknown end date. But if you say to them, actually, we're just going to get this to the point of a soft launch. And by soft launch, I mean get it into beta mode. Beta mode means that at any point in time, it can be turned on to production mode, a hard launch, with this flip of a switch. So if your marketing team then wants 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months to do the biggest, baggest launch that they possibly want, then they can have that planning and they're no longer tied to you figuring out which day or which hour you're going to be able to flip the switch and get this thing live. So your marketers and your salespeople should only ever be selling stuff that is actually live and ready for the customers, as opposed to selling stuff that doesn't actually exist yet. And your customers, you know what? They want to know what you're building into your product. They want to know that your service is going to be valid for them in the future, and that's totally fair enough as well. You know, should they keep paying you? Well, you should be able to show them your high-level roadmap, as long as it doesn't have dates, as long as it's not this feature-level thing. Show them your vision. Show them that you're aligned with what you're doing. Show them your prototype for your strategy and use it to get feedback as to whether you are building towards the right thing. Get market validation. That's really, really helpful. And also show them the history of your releases to build trust with them. If they can see that you release every week or every month and you're constantly improving it, and you've got this vision to become this thing that they want to see happen, then they're going to continue paying for your service. You're building really good trust with them. Now, that was a very, very high-level thing. I've covered that and other customers like it in this guide here. It's a 6-page guide. The last page specifically covers objections that you might run into when you deal with tricky stakeholders who don't like the idea of moving away from timeline roadmaps. It's all about moving towards lean roadmaps. So grab that guide and hopefully you find that helpful. I'm always happy to chat to you about your specific tricky stakeholders as well afterwards. There's always one. All right, the last thing I want to add in here, because this has gone all new, is about AI. Who here has been using ChatGPT or other AI tools? Yeah, cool, all right, basically everybody. Who's built it into their app in any sort of way? Okay, some people as well, all right, cool. I want to talk about how we can be using this as your first mate as a product manager, right? Where is this going to be going for us as product people? I mean, here at ProdPad, we have been building it in for quite some time. I mean, this was available in ProdPad a little while ago, the ability to, I've got 5 minutes. It's a good thing I've got 5 minutes worth of content. Thanks, Glenn. You're able to take all your feedback and bubble up what people have been asking, the signals from that body of feedback, right? So you're able to see what kind of things people are asking for. But we've been taking that a step further and being able to say, hey, you've got this idea. Let's take the title and help you generate the rest of it. Let's help you ask questions like, what are the risks and challenges, how you might formulate those target outcomes, how you might write those user stories. Let's just speed up and reduce that grunt work for product people. And what happens when you reduce the grunt work for product people? Maybe we can actually start spending all that time that we used to spend writing user stories and specs and grooming our backlog and actually get out there and talk to customers more. Yes. Yes. So that's where we're heading. It'll generate key results for you. We've been having a ball with this, by the way. Any feature requests that you'd like to see, let us know. We've been doing lots of stuff. But we've also realized that, anybody familiar with the Kano model? All right, Kano model basically means that things that you invest in, you've got things that are easy to invest in versus customer satisfaction. Things like GPT right now or AI right now seem to be true delighters, right? You put very little investment in and it's creating delight. Even people in niche markets are like, this is just, it gets me, it's doing this really cool stuff. Awesome. But we also know that it's going to be everywhere, right? It's going to be expected that AI is in almost every tool, and people are going to be expecting to go faster and in every tool. So how do you keep ahead of that as you're building this type of stuff? Well, you got to think about where you can keep ahead of that curve. So we're actually thinking about how AI can be used as a coach, not just as a generator, but also as a guide. So this is the first iteration of it, but we're actually using it to say, hey, so you've been generating all this stuff, or you've been writing all these ideas, but let's figure out, you wrote this idea. Is it any good? Does it compare with the vision that you wrote earlier? Let's have it give some constructive feedback and have you ask questions like, hey, this may be not such a good idea. It doesn't really match up with your vision. It doesn't really match with your objectives. You have this roadmap with a whole bunch of feedback, a whole bunch of initiatives in there, but these 3 initiatives in here, I'm not really seeing how they're going to help you meet your strategy. We've actually run out on our own roadmap and changed our own strategy because of it. Gave us some really good feedback. So stuff like this is going live. We're building out a bot that's going to allow you to, just in Slack, chat to it as if it's literally a product coach and say, hey, I've got this tricky stakeholder. How do I get them on board with this? Anybody, can talk to you about what's going on in your product pad backlog. Is there any feedback in here that relates to this thing right here that I might be able to use? So, we're trying to get to the point where we're moving away from the product management grunt work of just having lists and spreadsheets and more something that you can converse with and just use it to understand. Get to the point of using it for, so you can have clear decisions more quickly. So I think this is where we're going to be getting to with building our tools in AI, and it's going to be moving faster and faster and faster. So I'd be happy to chat to people about where I think this is going further. I've probably got more on this, but I'm not going to go much deeper into this because Glenn is telling me 2 seconds. Remember that your job is not to have all the answers. Your job is not to write, design, code, or do all the things. I think we've gotten past that hang-up of coding, right? Your job coming up next is to reduce the grunt work for yourself and for other people. This is where we can use AI. We want to get back to talking to customers, stakeholders, and asking the big questions, making clear decisions. And that's just not just as you as product people, how we want to help you, but how you can help your customers as well using this new tech. So with that, I want to say, I hope that I've helped you with some tips on how you can get away from this old way of road mapping and in with the new. And I want to invite you to ask any questions. Please reach out for more. And I'm going to hand the mic and the controls back over to Glenn. Thank you very much.